there is something short-lived essentially about democracy. Democracy is impatient. That's a point that Tocqueville likes to make. It's important for a democracy or a republic to realize its own weaknesses, and that it's not enough just to denounce monarchy or rival forms of government. It's important to see where you are weak and why it is that democracies and republics in the past have failed.
Dr. Mansfield, is America too feminine today?
Perhaps a little bit too feminine. That's a strange question, but I think there's some truth in the suggestion that women are not allowing men to be employed as men. In a book I wrote in 2006 called Manliness, at the end of it, I said that the main difficulty would be that men are unemployed as men, meaning as males. So that book was a kind of modest defense of manliness. And I didn't talk too much about women, but I did talk about feminism. Feminism is an opinion that there's no serious differences between the sexes, meaning that your sex doesn't give you duties or rights or status in any way different from the other sex. So that's a kind of equality that feminism wanted, which means that the two sexes are pretty much the same. In the 19th century, feminism was different. In the 19th century, women declared that women were superior, not just equal, but superior to men, especially in morals. And this was an opinion, a traditional opinion, long time to be seen. You can see it in Tocqueville's discussion of American women. And since women were more moral, if they had the vote, they would improve our politics. And they would take us out of the corruption of big city bosses and parties and male voters getting drunk. So, and that to some extent succeeded, because we did give women the suffrage in the early 20th century. And but that wasn't good enough for Simone de Beauvoir, so the author of our present-day feminism. She wrote a book called The Second Sex, and which she meant that women come after men. And this is a situation which must be improved or corrected. Right there in that title, I think one might raise a question as to whether it's always best to be first. Women have the advantage of, in the older view, of allowing men to take the initiative, and then they judge. Women are judges in this view. They think and decide. Men are simply attracted, usually for beauty, and often for superficial qualities like that. Whereas women think more, or at least have the opportunity to think more of what it would be like to be married to this person. So women are more interested in the long term. They like relationships than women, and men are more interested in quick results, as Donald Simons, a sex sociologist whom I much like, said, with men, lust comes before love, and with women it's the opposite. love comes before lust. So that's a way in which one can understand the two sexes are different, and therefore the harm that might come when women do or try to be the same as men, when they try to be imitation men, you might say. And I think that's what still is the ruling doctrine. Now, the ruling doctrine isn't always practiced right now. There are a lot of women who are uncomfortable with being called feminists, and every woman is a kind of feminist in the sense that you want to defend your sex, what you've been given. But a lot of them are uncomfortable being called feminists, I think, for this reason. If you're a hardline feminist, there's really no contact that you want with men, especially any permanent contact. Yeah, so if you want to get married and have children, you have to do it with a man, and it's nice if you can fall in love with him too. So, in other words, to some extent, sacrifice your independence. I think it's wrong to think that autonomy is a good thing. We're not made autonomous. Just to reproduce our race, we need to get together. And it's good to stay together or to be married because each sex sort of takes the rough edges off the other. And you get to see the other side of the other point of view, the other side. Some people are better at this than others, but still there's the opportunity, and you see what it takes to get along with someone, and you become a little less self-centered. And this is especially true for men, who tend to be more self-centered, I think, than women. So this is a long speech to say I agree with the question that America is a little bit too, let me say feminist instead of just feminine.
Well, one of the themes of your book on manliness is just your extraordinary, and I think correct, respect for both sexes. There's such conscientiousness and respect woven throughout your text. And I wonder, for those who haven't yet had the chance to read your book, tell us, what is manliness, and how was Margaret Thatcher manly?
My quick definition of manliness is taking charge of things in a situation of risk. So manliness is a quality, sometimes good, sometimes bad, of those who seek to take charge and handle dangerous situations, or at least tricky situations, and don't hang back or just watch or sit and ponder and judge things. So manliness is a quality of a very few men, not of most men or all men. I think that's why I distinguish manliness from masculinity, or what's called toxic masculinity. There is a certain toxic masculinity that goes with being a male, but manliness is an attitude of, especially of those people who are manly, against those men who aren't. It's not so much against women, because they're excused from being manly. After all, they're women. But manliness is just for the few. So it's not the same thing as being a gentleman, which is being gentle, though strong. And a person can be manly without being very gentle, or being gentlemanly. So there are kind of levels of the quality of manliness. But it's also the case that there are exceptions and overlaps between men and women. And Margaret Thatcher is an example of of a, of a woman who sought risk and suffered it in a manly fashion, very bold and very durable. The Iron Lady.
Yes, exactly. Well, one of our sophomores just started a gentleman's society on campus here to practice manners. But I want to ask you on a slightly different topic. Right now, many on the right are arguing over whether unity matters more than calling out extremists on their own side, especially when the left is seen as the bigger threat. From a Burkean view about party politics, how should we think about this problem?
Unity versus disunity.
Exactly. Within one party.
Yeah. I'm a little in favor of disunity. I don't think that conservatives need to speak in unison, all in the same voice. And there's some who are have a greater sense of the need for pluralism, and thus a certain tolerance for the other side, as opposed to those who are gung-ho in favor of conservatism and always want to win. I'm a little bit on the former side, that, especially in present conditions where we have two parties that are hyper-partisan and also very close in strength. So each side always thinks it can win an election, and it exaggerates the crisis that might arrive should the other side win. And I think that gives us a kind of extra enthusiasm we don't need. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of more with the Burke people. I understand Burke would be a conservative in the sense of a preference for the gradual. Now that also doesn't mean that you can't rail at an enemy, as Burke did to the French Revolution, and as conservatives might do today to the Hamas rebels and the pro-Hamas protests that we see in universities. But I still think that we should live in the realm of the 17th century liberalism, which has something for both sides.
How do we get back to the 17th century liberalism given the climate today?
Look at Locke. This is my example, John Locke. He's really, I think, the founder of our liberalism today. And I mean, it's a bit simple to say so, but we can do it with him. He's famous for two things. First is toleration, having to do with religion. And this means, in effect, free speech. And he's also famous for being able to make a lot of money. And he's got an argument in favor of private property. So now that you see the fit there between free speech for liberals and private property for conservatives. And what happened after Locke was those two things got split off from each other. This was especially in Rousseau. But Locke thought that those two things were connected. Though they were different, they would appeal to different sorts of people, intellectuals and businessmen. That's my thinking on that, and I somehow still think that framework from the 17th century works for us today, and so it helps us to see that those two things go together. That they're both kinds of freedom, and they're both equal opportunity rights, and they both lead to inequalities of different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad thing that our elites, you can say, are divided between those who make a lot of money and those who really have a lot of influence by being able to write or speak, get in the newspapers and get a kind of following. It's good that each has a kind of natural opponent. Let's not say enemy, just opponent. And it's because that keeps our elite from uniting. Uniting can be bad if it's in some bad cause. So there's life and there's help in pluralism, or at least bipartisanship.
Right. Well, and just to clarify, when I hear pluralism, I'm inclined to think of everyone holding hands and singing Kumbaya together and being perhaps relativistic or watering down their principles in order to form agreements. And that's not what you're defending here.
All right. Yeah. Actually, what's happened is that we fight pretty hard, and one side wins or loses, and the other side is really forced to water down its principles more than wanting to do so from the first. Pluralism in the United States is especially bipartisan, as we have two parties. I think that's a big advantage, because it means that there are two sets of people trying to form a majority. It is necessary in a big country with a lot of interests, many different states and in different places, with different types of people. It's difficult to get a majority. But a majority is what you need in order to rule a democracy. So that immediately means compromise in one sense or another, to get on the winning side. So you think when you're voting, well, these people are not really to my taste, but they'll help us defeat the Democrats. See, so I know it's not so much watering their principles as expecting to get less from them, and being satisfied, and in the end perhaps even more satisfied by being able to be together in a large free country. We wouldn't want it smaller, and we wouldn't want it less free. So you have to deal with the people that, because it's a free country, don't agree with you.
Exactly.
So yes. So I say, in the first place, it's not necessarily watering your principles, because if the principle is keeping freedom and keeping it secure in a big country that's heterogeneous, and in the second place, you can't get everything you want.
Which is such a smart point that we need to be reminded of sometimes. And I wonder, how have our elites failed in recent years? And also, what do populists get wrong today?
Yeah. The elite I see that mostly that has failed is the university elite and the intellectuals who have just become more and more exclusionary, all under the banner of inclusiveness. They want to include you, but only on their terms, which have turned out to be woke or political correctness, the taking the word diversity and abusing it, so that it now means people with the same ideas as you, but a different sex or a different race. And that's what the universities have been, that's their principle, the way they've been operating on, what they've been operating on for some time now. And it came to a climax at Harvard and Penn and other places, but especially in Harvard, where a president was, a woman was made president, who wanted to leave the ivory tower behind and make Harvard part of society. No. And she discovered, to her dismay, and made me feel sorry for her too, that being a part of society meant getting dressed down by another woman in the House of Representatives. So, which leading to events that after which she soon had to resign. So that's a picture of the failure of America's elite in the universities, which is, I think, where the main failure has occurred. That's where we get our thinking from. And if our thinking is just this monolithic so-called diversity, that's not good enough. It's so obvious that it's not good enough when you see that half of the country disagrees with you, and you have nothing to offer them, and don't even know, don't begin to know the way they think. So the way they think has been called populism. So as a kind of populism is a kind of rebellion against elites, you could say it's endemic to democracy. Democracy means rule of the people, and so you're certainly going to have populism a lot. But somehow we can't get away from the need and the existence of elites. That's the trouble with democracy. Even a democracy would need to have experts. So some people are carpenters and plumbers, and then others not. So you have to make sure that you have plumbers and carpenters. And to do that, you might have to pay them a little bit more than others, or at least give them more recognition, so that it comes to be a violation of equality, if equality means that everybody is simply the same. So even to make itself work, democracy needs people who are experts, who are better or more skilled, more thoughtful, more inventive, more beautiful too, and even athletes. So all this to give us a certain enjoyment as well as cover our needs, means that we need elites. And then how do you choose the elites? There, I think that democracy can come in by requiring equal opportunity, and so that the elite is not just based on tradition or family or superior race, that kind of thing, but on merit. Now, merit is, if you think about it, is really an undemocratic thing. And yet it's the most democratic way to supply the need for inequality. So that means that you do need these elites, even if you don't like the way they're behaving. So populism can flit from one party to the other, depending on which finds more advantage in attacking those who are presently in government or have the highest status, and now are in the universities. And then I say that's just part of democracy, but it's also a quality that, namely the elite, democracy needs elites, and democracy hates elites. Those two somehow go together.
Our university president, Carlos Carvalho, recently gave a speech in defense of inequality, in which he describes our mission to cultivate a new American elite to create a natural aristocracy, which is necessarily rooted in merit. And in many ways, this mission it's not only right, but it is also born in response to the campus craziness that we've witnessed across the country in recent years. And I wonder, were you surprised by the anti-American craziness seen at Harvard?
I was, indeed, by the strength of it. I was very much surprised by the protests in favor of the Palestinians without denouncing Hamas. Hamas performed a massacre of primitive savagery, which it really, for the sake of starting a war, and for the purpose of showing Israel that it couldn't defend its own women and children. So that was an atrocity, and to defend that, to be on the side of that, it struck me dumb. And I think I didn't realize how that kind of sentiment had built up on the left, and so we had the protests in favor of the Palestinians after October 7th, and that was insupportable for me. I couldn't tolerate that, and I think it was by showing a lack of revulsion that our president, Claudine Gay, lost her job. It wasn't that we had forgotten the ivory tower, although we had, but that when she came to take part in society, which is what she said she wanted to do, she couldn't find it in her to denounce those protesters. So I was very much disgusted with that. And I think some sort of change has become possible at Harvard and at the main universities, the most prestigious ones, which have been the worst in point of diversity. I think now that there is some chance, now that they know that they have to face the opposition of Republicans. I don't think that opposition will go away when Trump leaves the presidency, because a lot of the Republicans have been to those universities, and now I just sort of let them develop this ridiculous one-sided character, and so they're after them and won't forget it. Therefore, since they're the situation of living in a bubble, as people say, living in a one-sided paradise, not even aware of who you are and who's disagreeing with you, I think that really has changed. And it will be very difficult to change the universities because of faculty tenure. and the fact that almost all the faculty, not just most, almost all the faculty is liberal or left. But even to a point, I think, a few conservatives or few Republicans will show that the trend is away from this sort of monolith character, and change the thinking and outlook of my ex-colleagues, whom I now look upon from retirement.
Well, the Alder Tree Charity Foundation just funded a chair in political philosophy in your honor, but they did it here at UATX, which we are so honored by. Why? Why UATX, not Harvard?
Oh, well, Harvard has, so to speak, given me no honors. And that's the same is true with my profession, the political science profession. And the few honors I've had come from Republicans and from conservatives, and I'm used to that. And but I also agreed with suitable respect a university that makes an honor for me.
Who is the best thinker to help us understand the mob takeover and campus craziness that we've been witnessing?
You could distinguish the best thinker, that's what you asked, just from the best present-day reporter of events, and leaving that aside and which newspapers to read and which podcasts to listen to. The thinker I would choose is Tocqueville. I think his now 200-year-old book has the most to say. If you read it, it's the most comprehensive treatment of American democracy from the point of view of a friend, but not a partisan. And he sees best our strengths and our weaknesses, and I think gives the best analysis. It's important for a democracy or a republic. The Federalists spoke of a republic. Tocqueville speaks of democracy. It's important for that form of government to realize its own weaknesses, and that it's not enough just to denounce monarchy or rival forms of government. It's important to see where you are weak and why it is that democracies and republics in the past have failed and come adrift and gone to disaster. That's always possible. There is something short-lived essentially about democracy. Democracy's impatient. That's a point that Tocqueville likes to make. We have two attitudes that are sort of in tension. One is a can-do attitude. We can do it. We can find a way. And our politicians like to stress this. And the other is a due process attitude. It isn't right to take shortcuts. Everybody has rights, and those rights are protected by due process, something legal. The first way can do makes you want to do something illegal. The second way doesn't care for the illegal and wants it to be according to a form, the process, the correct process. And we often think or say that it's better to give a criminal his rights and tolerate a mistake when he's let off and doesn't get his deserved punishment, as long as he got his rights. It's more important to give rights, protect rights, than to convict criminals. That's the due process attitude. Whereas the can-do would say it the other way around. So those two things are at odds and keep our country lively and excitable and to some extent free because we're at odds with ourselves. But that's just one of the points that Tocqueville makes. He's very much in favor of the forms and formalities of liberty. So to read him, you become suspicious of trying to do everything the quick way or the easy way. So, and then that's very much a current topic today, of course, with the Trump administration.
What is America's biggest long-term threat?
Long-term threat, ourselves. Taking ourselves for granted, and then not looking carefully at our enemies abroad, underestimating the strength of anti-democratic sentiment. And when people say death to you, as Iran has said, pay attention. They might just mean it, and you want to keep on your mettle, keep strong, and keep willing to be strong. Our present status is to be the most powerful country in the world, and it's the only guarantee really of the world order that we pretty much take for granted. So I'm now talking in terms of foreign policy, and that maybe this is the biggest threat. But it becomes the biggest threat through internal domestic politics, because our domestic politics can become too demanding and too self-centered and not sufficiently aware of the dangers abroad. So it's a kind of combination of domestic inattention and foreign opposition.
Who was your most formidable intellectual foe?
Most formidable intellectual fellow.
Foe
Well,
or enemy?
That's certainly Leo Strauss, but I can't call him a fellow. He was far above my weak mind, and he was the most intelligent person I ever met in my life. It took all my powers to try to keep up with him when he was, I was in a reading group with him for a year. I was never his student, but I got to know him. He treated me with a mock equality because I was from Harvard instead of from Chicago. And so all the other people that were there, they were all from Chicago, and they were his students. Whereas I had already had my PhD from Harvard, I must be equal to him. So he would tease me that way. And I never teased him back.
And who was your intellectual enemy? Who was the opposite of Strauss for you in your career?
Never one as powerful as the friend. You could say that Strauss's most powerful enemy was Heidegger, a German philosopher. But in my work, I would say that my most powerful, not enemy, but opponent or adversary would be Quentin Skinner, the head of the Cambridge School of political theory. So he had a view of Machiavelli and a view generally of liberalism and of political theory, political philosophy, that I much disagree with. He was an historicist, or he is still alive, an historicist who believes in the importance of the context. It's not possible, he thinks, for human beings to go beyond their lives or to think of permanent problems. They're always defending something. That's what thinkers do. They defend. They don't seek or analyze or try to understand, but they defend, and they defend against the enemies they see in their own time around themselves. So their whole meaning is wrapped up in their own time, and which he calls context. So that you could call his position contextualism, and which is a form of historicism. And I think that's a grand intellectual enemy of political philosophy.
In one of your many books, you observe that the germ of the Enlightenment was a conversion of peoples away from faith in God to faith in human control, led by philosophers of the type we now call intellectuals, and oriented against priests. And this is part of a larger passage on Machiavelli. Tell me more about the legacy of Machiavelli.
Well, I'm just bringing out a book called The Rise and Fall of Rational Control. And it's a book composed of the lectures I gave in a course at Harvard on modern political philosophy, the history of it. So I think that Machiavelli began modern political philosophy with the notion of what I call rational control, what other people have called rational control, meaning that life should be lived by reason rather than by prejudice or tradition or superstition. Those are the three enemies of reason. So it's possible to make a rational society that knows how to deal with our irrationality. It isn't that we're all going to be good reasoners, but rather that our prejudices, our superstition, and so on, which are in a way natural to us, will be made to serve our reason, even if it can't be made rational. So that's rational control through the control or the manipulation of the ways in which we are irrational. So, and one of the ways, the main way, is through religion, according to Machiavelli. Religion is based on a wish and not on the true effects that we get from our wishes. So the true effect is what he called the effectual truth, and he used that phrase once in the 15th chapter of The Prince, one of his two main books. And that, I think, began modernity. And it was continued, developed, and sometimes opposed or even transformed by other philosophers, all the way from Machiavelli through to Nietzsche. So that's what I show in this particular book, and it's So that's what. That's a little bit of an elaboration of what you quoted from me. Yeah, intellectuals replace priests. Even the same people who are priests, for Machiavelli, can become intellectuals, because he says already that the priests don't believe the things that they try to get you to believe. They don't believe that God punishes people who are evil in this world and does it in the next world. And so they don't fear the punishment that they do not see. That's a phrase he uses. And if he can get priests to change their view, to accept that view, then he's got a kind of an engine within the old regime, which will bring on the new regime.
And what are the consequences of a society in which intellectuals replace priests? What does that mean for us moderns?
Disruption, and if not turmoil, decay. Just look at the statistics of social happiness, you could say, which the statisticians or the quantitative sociologists and political scientists offer us. They tell us that people who go to church and get married and have children have happier lives, just in the most obvious sense, but healthier, more property, more prosperous, less criminal, and to all appearances much better than those who in anger or disinterest fail to believe and fail to answer the questions that are raised by belief. So it's an intellectual failing as well. That what is our reason, and what are the challenges to reason? And so why is there religion? I don't know what is good and what are the objections to it. I think all those things, questions disappear from our universities, and the effects of it are to be seen in our societies.
Should UATX be neutral, or more specifically, should we aim to resemble the original sectarian Harvard, today's Harvard, or something else entirely?
The original Harvard was Puritan Harvard. I like to say that when the Puritans came here, the indigenous people, the so-called Native Americans, a misnomer, I think, but the so-called Native Americans didn't have a university, so the Puritans were forced to make one for themselves. And you can a startup university like yours, the UATX is something in that situation, except that the surroundings are perhaps more hostile than the Native Americans were to a place like Harvard. You see, that was 1636. You see how soon that was after the Puritans first came, the Pilgrims, in 1620. So, and I have a country place in Ipswich, which is near, near Cambridge, but it was founded in 1635.
Wow.
So there is something of a resemblance between the UATX and the starting of a Puritan university. However far distant the beliefs behind the two are.
What has been the greatest waste of time during your career?
The greatest waste of time is one of my greatest love, watching sports. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, in closing, I have so many more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. So if mass culture poisons the soul, what should we consume instead? Give us a few recommendations.
Well, I'll give you one that I'm working on, Gulliver's Travels. That's a children's book, but it's full of the question of unseemly. What is unseemly? What is shame? And how can we understand it? So that's one book. I'll mention Tocqueville's Democracy in America, as I've said this in print. The best book on America and the best book on democracy all together in one, and Don Quixote, and all of Shakespeare.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Dr. Mansfield, thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's good to be with you.
Likewise. Thank you.